All right, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. We are getting settled and we will kick off in just a moment. We're excited to have you joining us for our webinar this afternoon, Harnessing AI in the Workplace. Why don't you go ahead and tell us in the chat where you are calling in from, and maybe there'll be a prize for the person from furthest away from us in Virginia. We are kicking off in just a moment. All right. Well, we will go ahead and get started. So once again, thank you everyone for joining us this afternoon. My name is Samantha Williams. I am the Director of Organizational Strategy and Program Innovation here at Insight. I will be moderating this discussion today on harnessing AI in the workplace. Insight, as many of you know, we provide employment services, career and employment readiness training for job seekers who are blind or visually impaired. We connect employers with talented professionals and support job seekers and employers through the process. Before we fully kick off and get started, also want to share with you that Insight's parent company, the National Industries for the Blind, will be hosting its premier annual event in partnership with NAEPB, which is the National Association for the Employment of People Who Are Blind, to champion employment for people who are blind. This event, February 24th through 28th in Washington, D.C. Theme of the event is Realizing America's Promise. So we hope to see many of you there for networking and great sessions. So again, wanted to share that with you before we kick off here. So let's get to our topic, and then I will get to introducing our panelists. So topic today, we are having an important discussion on AI in the workplace. So we'll discuss some of the key considerations for organizations as they think about AI's potential in the workplace for their employees, their workflows, and we'll spend the most time today focusing on some of the practical applications of AI for employees, particularly AI's promise to support employees who are blind or visually impaired or have other disabilities in your workplaces. So feel free to add your comments to the chat. I will keep an eye on them and convey your questions as we go. And we'll give some opportunities to unmute as needed. And I see we already have a hand raised, so we will get to some questions as we get into the discussion and kind of give you that chance to unmute. So you'll see your controls at the bottom. There's a Q&A feature, so you can ask questions there as well as a chat. So feel free to use those and we'll moderate. So pleased here to introduce our panelists. So first up, we have Doug Goist, who is Insight's Program Manager for Workforce Development. So Doug has 14 years of experience in the field of disability employment. He works with corporate partners at the intersection of advanced technology and employee performance. He mentors regularly and advises our workforce on the use of technology and AI. He holds certificates, degrees from the University of California, Wake Forest University. He's also served 7 years on the Alexandria Commission on Persons with Disabilities, including serving as Vice Chair and Transportation Chair. He's goalie for Team USA National Blind Hockey Team. We often don't mention that because then all the questions are hockey related, but important bio point for him. You can read a recent blog post. It was excellent by Doug on Insight's website titled Smart Apps, Smarter Independence, Celebrating National App Day with AI Tools that Empower People Who Are Blind. So please check that out. I will add some links and we'll follow with some links as well directly to our site and that blog, which you can read. We are expecting to be joined by Skylar Kovich as well. Dr. Kovich is an access technology professional political scientist and AI educator dedicated to helping blind, low vision job seekers navigate today's rapidly evolving digital landscape. Blind since birth, he specializes in training adults to use assistive technology, empowering learners to use AI tools for image description, document generation, research, professional writing. So we are excited to welcome Skylar. And then lastly, Dr. Jonathan Lucas is Insight's Executive Director. Jonathan has more than 18 years of workforce development experience supporting people with disabilities, as well as immigrants and other underserved populations. Served as a consultant to the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, State Department, European Union, numerous countries on workforce issues. His contributions to migrant workforce integration training programs have been recognized by the UN High Commissioner on Refugees as an international best practice. Jonathan earned his doctorate in organizational change and leadership from the Rossier School of Education at the University of Southern California, and holds an executive master's degree in leadership from McDonough School of Business at Georgetown and Master of Public Affairs from University of North Carolina, Greensboro. So we have a fantastic panel today. We're looking forward to a great discussion on AI and how we are using it, its potential in the workplace. So before we get to our questions, I would like to hand over to Jonathan to give his introduction. So Jonathan, over to you.
Thank you, Samantha, and thank you all for coming today. This is a great opportunity to talk about a change in our society through this advanced technology, and obviously provides opportunity and maybe even some issues around workforce development for people who are blind and visually impaired. So why does AI matter to Insight's mission? First and foremost, AI is no longer optional in the modern workforce. It's rapidly becoming a baseline skill across all industries. For individuals who are blind or have low vision, accessible AI tools can either reduce barriers or deepen inequalities, especially if this inclusion is not intentional. So that's something we need to focus on. And then lastly, Insight sits at the intersection of technology, accessibility, and workforce readiness, making AI for us a critical strategic priority. We see AI as a possible equalizer for blind and low vision talent. It can produce productivity through screen reader compatible tools, voice input, summarization, visual transcription, and automation. So there are ways that this new technology can support expanding careers and pathways, expanding knowledge of work. There are data adjacent roles and leadership tracks that can be utilized in technology and people with disabilities. And then lastly, it has the opportunity to reduce job carving by enabling individuals to perform at scale and speed, just like anyone else. So our role is to ensure AI adoption expands opportunity rather than excluding talent. And Insight as an organization, we're positioned to do a couple of things. One, translate emerging AI tools into practical, accessible workforce training. We can help employers to better understand how AI can be implemented to support disabled talent. And then we can prepare participants not just to use AI, but work alongside it in a responsible and competitive manner. Some ethics around this, Insight emphasizes ethical AI adoption, both from the employer side, but also as a user of it as an individual. We look at data privacy and consent, and then always bias mitigation, right? So all these tools tend to have biases built in sometimes, and we need to make sure that that does not affect the opportunities for people who are blind or low vision. We can inform stakeholders, and we reinforce professional agency and leadership credibility by supporting this effort. So the bottom line really is AI is reshaping the workforce in the United States and the world, and Insight wants to ensure that blind and low vision talent are reshaping it too, and using this tool as a competitive advantage. And by integrating AI into accessible, mission-driven workforce development, Insight protects opportunity. We're going to drive mobility and reinforce its role as a national leader in inclusive employment and innovation. So I'm happy to talk today and listen in on the experts as we talk about how we can use these tools to better support the blind and low vision community. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jonathan. All right. Well, without further ado, I want to get to kind of our first question here. So this question is specific to organizational readiness. So as Jonathan said, AI is here. So what, ready or not, your employees are already using it to augment their work in different ways. So many organizations, I would say most organizations are in a position of kind of catching up and establishing the policies, procedures to not only protect against the risks, but also harness it, as our title suggests. So what are some of the key considerations for organizations thinking about what AI policies they may need to put in place? So Doug, gonna go over to you to give your thoughts on this topic. And as I mentioned, feel free to post in the chat your thoughts or questions that you have, and we'll get to them. Thanks for letting us know about the chat feature. So it's all active now, ready to go. All right, Doug, over to you.
Hey, thanks, Samantha and Jonathan. So I just have two disclaimers right out of the box. The first is, as you can understand, Insight and NIB, we're not the AI experts, meaning we can't really speak to policy, data management, risk management, and so forth. We're not qualified to tell you what to do as far or suggest recommendations, but we can give a high-level overview of that. And the second disclaimer is pretty much anything we say in this webinar is probably going to be out of date by next month because the speed of AI, as we all know, is mind-boggling how fast it is. So to answer that question, as far as readiness with your companies, I know there are a number of nonprofit agencies who both manufacture products and provide services and also support the blind population in the greater community. Do you all have a general strategy, or at least most likely you're not going to have a specific strategy, but the first place to start is asking yourself, what tools did we find or do we find are out there that are going to be the most effective for our situation, meaning supporting people who are blind, blind employees, blind users, and so forth. Pretty much all of the commercial large language models out there, if we're talking about desktop use, are accessible. They're text-based prompts, and you get text answers. But the key to the output is you need to have a strategy of teaching all of your employees, regardless of ability, to create the output in an accessible format. We can talk more specifics later, because if you are creating any type of visual charts, or you don't instruct the language model that this is specifically for someone who cannot see or someone with low vision, you are going to get visual tools first, because the language models don't know. So that would be my overall suggestion, is start very simple and identify the tools by using employees or other users who use screen readers, magnification programs, and everything else to create a list of language models or AI models that either they're comfortable with or they're very accessible, and that way you can start narrowing them down. And then the question becomes, which one is suited for which purpose the best? Meaning some are more technical, some are less capable, and then the risks involved with your company data and instructing employees kind of what to best practices of what to send out there into the cloud, basically, proprietary information and so forth. So these are just some high-level considerations you need to start from out of the box, if that makes sense. Samantha?
Thanks, Doug. All right. So that was our high-level overview on kind of the organizational piece. So when we're thinking about, organizations just starting to put policies in place, how then should they start to think about the workflows and job functions in their organizations that could be shifting now, with the tools in place, and in active use by their employees.
So shifting the tools to the actual job duties, a lot of those of us in the blindness community that have experience with using different technologies, we're talking everything from desktop language models all the way to AI that's built into hardware solutions and portable solutions, such as the Meta Ray-Ban glasses, which are improving every day. So those are just some tools that either if somebody's working at a keyboard or away from the keyboard, that the ability to have access to a smartphone, a camera, microphone, and so forth, and feeding that data into an AI model opens a whole wide range of possibilities, all the way from, as an example, having AI look at a whiteboard to be able to see the charts and give a breakdown. These are more visual, aspects of it. AI has the capability of reading gauges, reading readouts on physical devices and so forth. So it's really promising in that regard. And then as far as office work and professional settings, it really opens the doorway to be able to access previously inaccessible content. So that could be presentations, that could be PDFs. And if somebody is totally blind, they're using a screen reading technology. AI has the ability to parse all of that or summarize it and so forth. With like Zoom meetings, you can get updates and so forth. So as a result, if you smartly integrate some of these AI capabilities into somebody's workflow, you can train AI or instruct it to create accessible documentation, accessible handouts, presentations, and so forth, and basically solve a lot of the problems that a lot of us have had over the years of trying to live in a sighted world, but not having the ability to, have an independent virtual assistant instead of a physical somebody with vision to be able to help us navigate a lot of complicated documentation sometimes, and also just getting through the workflow process. What's promising on the horizon too, and I'll just briefly mention this, is just recently Amazon released something called Coworker. That's Cowork, and it's something called a large action model. And so what that will give somebody who's blind or disabled the ability to do, for instance, we do contract closeout, NIB does. Those models, these action models, will be able to actually go into an interface that's not accessible and perform functions just purely based on text or spoken prompts. In other words, do all the clicking, filling out the information, so forth. So that's something that I see as really promising on integrating AI as it improves into blind employee workflows.
Awesome. Thanks, Doug. So this is where we'll get a little bit specific, and we have Skylar with us. Skylar,
yeah, apologies for that.
No,
can you hear me?
We can hear you. We're glad you're here. We introduced you, and want to direct this next question to you. So we're talking about AI in organizations. We're talking about it in job descriptions and workflows. So into the weeds, what are the tasks that AI can help augment for employees in an organization? So what does this actually look like in practice for an employee who now has this tool, these extra tools to use?
Well, thank you to Samantha and the team. And so one of the major tools has to do with summarizing either a document or an image that is a part of the work. So for example, in my work at Braille Institute, if I wanted to figure out how many hours each instructor worked per month, uh, that was in Excel rather than in a database. And so if I asked ChatGPT to summarize the file saying how many hours did this particular instructor work, it saves hours of time to be able to get that information right away. Now, you do have some security issues with that organizations need to discuss when it comes to, should particular students' names that might be in that Excel file, like, is that okay to provide to AI as long as there's no other personal information besides the name of the student and what types of sessions they had? Uh, at that time, there was no directive, so I honestly just uh, continue to do that as a work saving measure. Uh, there are other situations where we're provided a PDF or an image file of some sort, and we can now use AI to summarize that without nearly as much visual assistance. So summarization is probably the top uh, major thing that AI can help blind employees with. But document generation is a big part of it too. So if I want to uh, come up with a spreadsheet that has particular parameters or a PDF file that has particular parameters, even something like an invoice for me as a part-time consultant, I can ask AI to do that and come up with a file that I can be reasonably sure is uh, what was being asked for. Blind job seekers too can also use it to come up with, say, a well-formatted PDF file that contains both a resume and a cover letter. So that can be a big help. And one other major area would be the research and writing tools. So asking AI to do a quick research project, you do have to be careful with the research that comes up, and especially on a topic that you don't know, because you don't know if there's either hallucinations or uh, missing the nuances somehow, where, if you really know about a topic, you would understand uh, where AI needs to be supplemented by digging deeper into the references. But whether a job is really research heavy or not, uh, that is increasingly being used. And writing tools. So drafting emails to clients, for example, if I wanted to send an email to a client summarizing how to use AI, for example, it can do that. And so instead of uh, spending 20 minutes writing a particular email and then having to edit it again, you can have the broad outline of the email being written, and then you edit it after that. And that editing is really important because sometimes AI will add extra information that could confuse a client and or sometimes be in the wrong tone. And so you can either ask AI to edit it or just edit it yourself at that point, because there does come to be a scaling issue where sometimes asking AI to edit over and over again may actually be more time than editing yourself. But for that initial prompt, it can be a big help. Uh, One other note here, I just talked to somebody yesterday, as I'm currently a part-time consultant for California Department of Rehab. As this guy has very little experience with voiceover, uh, either as an iPhone user or a Mac user, but he can now create invoices using uh, voice to text only with his iPhone 16 by asking ChatGPT to create that invoice with particular parameters and then share it with a particular person. Now, that might not cut it when it comes to a really professional office environment, but this guy basically has a small business with his friends. And so he's able to contribute more to that business uh, and really have good entrepreneurial opportunities and independence, even with just using voice to text on his phone. It's pretty amazing.
And good comment in the chat by Christopher. Always edit your AI generated text. And you hear a lot, AI is an assistant. It's not, your final draft of anything that you're using it for. And, we've all seen, any articles or documents, and you can start to tell what is an AI generated. So it's meant as a first draft to get you to your 50-60% solution to save you time. So a follow-up question to both Skylar, you and Doug. You mentioned kind of using tools. You mentioned ChatGPT. What are the specific tools that you use the most, at work in general, that you'd, as what's best for document summarization, online research? What are the tools that are kind of in your AI arsenal?
I'm a ChatGPT fan. It's what I have the pro version of, and I think it is good to pick one AI to have the pro version of, unless you have very specialized needs. Copilot, last year at around this time, had actually very poor accessibility in a lot of ways, at least for the JAWS with the Copilot app. I think it has improved. Gemini has good accessibility, and I have heard that for certain specialized needs, Gemini can be better. But yeah, I do tend to be the type of person to stick with one thing if I have the pro version of it. And so I have settled on ChatGPT for the most part.
Doug, any thoughts there?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, when we talk about AI, I start from getting up basically in the morning. AI tools, both apps and using things like Meta glasses, they're actually very good at coordinating your wardrobe to go to the office and so forth. So you can use it for that. So non-professional daily life events. And then as far as the tools, I'm somebody who uses any and all options. So as Tyler mentioned, you really do have to pay attention to the output. And Samantha, you mentioned this too. So I heard somebody the other day talk to me, oh, yeah, they trust but verify. And I said, no, it's more like verify and still don't trust. Because as Tyler said, for instance, I'll give you a case example. If you're working at a company and you want to make resource guides for people, your employees who are blind or visually impaired, and you're like, okay, I want keyboard only alternative descriptions to all of our training materials and so forth. It will come. Any of these language models will come up with it. If they don't know, you won't know they don't know, and they'll make it up. So you have to verify each of those keystrokes. I like to compare one against the other. In other words, I'll take an output from one and put it in another language model. So far I've not run into major issues, which you can do when you're using a language model, whether it's ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini. Perplexity is a good one for deep research. Is if you do get an output, or somebody who's blind or visually impaired gets an inaccessible output, in many cases you can tell that language model your situation and you need an accessible version, because a lot of times they'll give you an image of the text or so forth. So in a lot of cases, it will reformat that output for you and create a very accessible document, either to download or to copy and paste.
Great. Just sharing a few questions that have come in our Q&A area. So this one is asking whether organizations are willing to purchase premium versions of AI apps for their employees. So I would pose this question back to the group here. You're leading organizations, it's up to you what you're willing to share here, but if anyone would like to share in the chat kind of what your experience has been in purchasing kind of those premium versions for an employee workforce, or how you've gone about exploring it. I would love to kind of hear from you in the chat about that. Another question about using Meta AI glasses in a secured government type setting. That's a good question, specific question. I don't know that we can weigh in on any specific secured government type setting. Any other thoughts to share on the meta glasses, Doug, that might relate to that question?
Yeah, and because we're federal contractors and I had worked in the CMS division as far as going to military sites and government sites, where we're closing out contracts, the contracts are put into a steel cage that has a lock. We go through the specialists go through security clearances, that it's always best to not take things into your own hands and clear it with the organization that you're working for first. So to give you an example, both the Meta glasses and then apps like Microsoft Seeing AI, which has a document setting. If you take a picture of a document, a contract in using Microsoft Seeing AI, that document setting will send it up to the cloud, and you lose control of that information. Whereas there's a setting called short text that processes only on the phone. If you could have your phone in airplane mode, you could have all of that, and it will still recognize that. It'll provide that optical character recognition. So that's a touchy one as far as dealing with sensitive documentation and knowing that you lose control when you're using a public language model. A couple that I would recommend never to use, especially if would be DeepSeek from China, because China, the government has full access to all of their companies, and their intelligence network can get to any type of information from their servers. So DeepSeek, although it's cheap and it's pretty good, it's not very secure. So that's kind of a longer answer to just be wary, and I wouldn't start using it out of the box without permission.
Have just a general question about you looking for jobs in AI. So I would just share from Insight side, please do reach out to us and connect to our job board, which is Insight Connect, which is for job seekers who are blind, visually impaired. We'd love to connect with you to explore that further. All right. So the next kind of topic here we've touched on a bit, but it relates to the use of AI for the purpose of disability inclusion, or to further inclusiveness in the workplace for employees who are blind, visually impaired, or have other disabilities. So is there anything that you can share? Both talk a bit about how AI can specifically help workers who have disabilities, and how employers can help promote AI as a tool specifically for accommodating employees. So we'll start with Doug on this one. So Doug, over to you. Any thoughts here?
Yeah, absolutely. So for as great as all of these language models or AI models, and soon to be large action models, like I mentioned with Amazon's Cowork, they're only as capable as the prompts that you're sending it. So a good practice to start thinking about, if you haven't already and you're thinking of implementing a language model at your company, at somebody's company who's supporting pretty much anyone, sighted or otherwise, is just have an idea that you need to learn how to produce or you need to teach the language model or instruct the language model to produce accessible documentation or outputs and so forth. So what this means, one of the technical terms would be WCAG 2.1 or 2 compliance. That stands for Web Consortium Accessibility Guidelines. And so if you instruct language models that you need to, and speaking to the language model now, you need to create these employee materials according to WCAG 2.x guidelines for accessibility. And that's but those guidelines are for all disabilities, but especially blindness, that incorporate color contrast, heading styles, structured tables, no merged cells in your Excel sheets, or minimizing those. So really that kind of instruction needs to be thought out in advance at your company that, hey, everybody needs to be on board here and instruct the language models to produce these type of documents according to our employees, if that makes sense.
Great. Skylar, anything you want to add there?
Yeah, I think that most screen readers have very good accessibility when it comes to AI apps. And one of the main tips for JAWS users is being able to press the H key to move between headings of a prompt. So ChatGPT and Gemini, and I believe now Copilot also, and really a lot of them have your prompt would be the first heading when you press the H key. And then each segment of the response that AI puts would be the next heading, uh, each separated individual headings. And you also have the ability to press Control plus F to find things like copy or share. It can be a little bit unpredictable which part of the text that is going to copy, but that then allows you to save information for the prompt for later. You can also press Control plus F for download. And if it's not working, you can actually ask the AI to uh, try uploading the file again so that the download link will appear in a different way. And models are definitely getting better and better at this. For the iPhone with VoiceOver, it can be, and maybe also for low vision as well, it can be a bit challenging to find things on the screen. But essentially scrolling or trying to do something in voice mode are really good workarounds for that. Uh, so again, you have a little bit of a gap here between employees who have really strong screen reader training and can basically figure things out for themselves on their own, or potentially jobs, especially maybe for people who are newer to being blind or low vision, where that is going to be more of a struggle, and it really does become on the employer to provide that support if you want to uh, mobilize success for your employees.
And what Tyler just it triggered a thought for me too, that when he was mentioning JAWS screen reader. So I believe it was in 2024, and this speaks about making sure that your JAWS users, for instance, are trained up and have the skills to be able to use the tools that are built in. So in 2024, Freedom Scientific, the maker of JAWS, implemented an AI feature into JAWS, and it's called Picture Smart. And an employee no longer really needs to have sighted assistance on an inaccessible page as far as pulling content off of it. So Picture Smart, it's just a simple key combination in JAWS, will reach out and ask. They used to have two language models. I think they're down to ChatGPT, to be able to get information off your computer or off the screen and translate it to you in text. So if it's a company sends you a scanned PDF, which we don't like scanned PDFs because those are images of text and they're charts. You can use the embedded tools in the JAWS screen reader to be able to pull that information out of there. So a lot of as Tyler said, your newer users don't know these capabilities. So it's important to be able to have that resource on hand or accessible for you to be able to get people up to speed, because a lot of times people don't know what they don't know. I'm still learning every day about, I think there are 330 JAWS commands. I don't know all of them. So
Definitely.
yeah.
Yeah, Picture Smart is a good tool because it would be more secure than actually uploading the PDF to ChatGPT, which is another option. Honestly, probably an easier option, but if you are security conscious,
Mhm.
then JAWS Picture Smart is definitely the better way to go. Uh, there are some technical difficulties with it still. I know at my last job, it was blocked for some reason, and
Yeah.
we never got that resolved. And I should also mention that NVDA, when I was talking about the heading structure, there are a lot of blind people who actually prefer NVDA now. And all of what I said about JAWS, besides that picture smart feature, uh, would work well for NVDA too, and even to some extent for narrator as well as a
And,
backup option.
and for those of you who don't know what NVDA is, that stands for Non-Visual Desktop Access. It is a free open source screen reader that pretty much people from around the world have been working to improve it. It's out of Australia, and I believe it's at nvdaproject.org. It's a nonprofit out of Australia, but it's probably what the world uses around the world. People are blind and visually impaired because it's free and it's open source. Because as we know, JAWS licenses can get pretty expensive, over $1,500 now. So
Definitely. And then for Mac users, VoiceOver pretty much
right.
has, when it comes to this sort of thing, a lot of the same types of commands, even if some of the keys are called something different. But that H key command that I mentioned for headings and control plus, and it would be command plus F for find, that would work. And one thing important to remember is when you're talking about VoiceOver for Mac, using a keyboard, that can be very different strategies than VoiceOver using a touchscreen for the iPhone. So that's worth keeping in mind too.
Touching back on kind of the question around enterprise-wide versions of of AI. So there's a question, asking, are AI apps such as ChatGPT, Gemini available for purchase for an organization-wide use, or do they have to be purchased for single users? I would say, and I would also refer to a comment Jeff brought in, that the most common one we see is Copilot, of course, because it's part of Microsoft 365. But very different functionality. I think I would say as from the user standpoint. And Jeff's comment, his full comment, Jeff Young, our company uses Office 365 and Copilot. Is part of that. We're trying to find a balance between accessibility and confidentiality regarding the info we put into AI. So the first part of the question, around ChatGPT and Gemini, are you aware, or is anyone aware or using kind of more enterprise-wide versions of those, or are they for single use only?
Samantha, just recently I didn't see any pricing points on it, but I did see that OpenAI and Google do have enterprise basically licenses for companies. And so the benefit of that, and more are coming online of that need, because they're recognizing employees are signing in and paying themselves, which is a whole other area of topic for discussion that companies need to have, about, well, how much this employee has pro, this employee doesn't have pro, because they're conscious of their spending and so forth. But the benefits of enterprise-wide AI is that these companies like OpenAI and Google provide virtual settings for companies that are way more secure than the kind of public settings. That's my understanding. I mean, don't quote me on that, but I know that that's a big driver to get a lockdown virtual session with your top line language model to be able to use it for company data.
Right.
But in the meantime, I think we would all stress that if you're in an HR department, Tyler brought this up before about Excel sheets, do not upload obviously sensitive medical information, things like that. So I'll give you an example. What I do if I come across some material that I'm even questioning whether it's sensitive or not, I make up scenarios and I make up the Acme company or something, and I ask the language model to give me a scenario based on with no data that even points to wherever I'm working or even my name or anything like that. So that's just something to be aware of.
Yeah, I mean, great point. At the most basic level, from an organizational standpoint, avoiding risk, you want to make sure all of your employees know that you're not to put any company proprietary data in a public,
Right.
open source or open LLM. It's, you don't want, it's hard to put the pieces back together and, to pull that information back out, but it's still out there no matter what. And you want to keep your company data secure. All right. So we know that AI comes with valid concerns around ethics and integrity. I think that's a concern that we all have as we're using this. What are some of the key questions organizations need to ask to make sure they're building trust around AI, the use of AI, and kind of mitigating? Talked about some of the risks, but mitigating risks adequately. So Doug, over to you again on this.
Yeah, I going back to the verify and don't really trust. Yeah. Use it more as a guideline. So obviously, if you're working in the legal department, you really need to be careful with that. I'll give you just a quick personal story. A relative of mine was using Grok 4 to do some background research on himself and about his athletic career, and 98% of it was made up. It was unbelievable. His coach had the wrong coach, the wrong county he was in, and so forth. So whatever the language models generate, you have to triple check, go to the links, make sure that those links are what they say they are. There's a very popularized story where a law student turned in his final paper to the law professor, and he used AI, and it made up the case completely that he referred to, and the professor could not believe that he did not check that this case never existed. So it will make things up. So that's the main thing, is just always verify, validate, use another language model if you have and then just use Google, go out on the internet to verify that information that you're getting is correct. And I go back to the keyboard commands and so forth when you're supporting blind employees, just because it says, oh, this output, this document, this digital document, PDF is good to go. I think Tyler would agree with this. You always need to have somebody who is a native or manual assistive technology user to validate anything, especially if you're sending it out widely, publicly. You need to have somebody with hands-on experience.
Yes. Yeah, I'd like to add to that. So, from the employee perspective, in a sense, solving problems is a part of the job, but when things are already busy at work anyway, you don't want to have to create additional problem-solving things for employees to deal with.
Yeah.
And so, putting those safeguards in place is really important. When it comes to client-facing or organizational partnerships or things like that, sending out wrong information, it might not even necessarily be completely wrong, but you never know when a minor mistake is going to cause embarrassment or something even worse. So one interesting example is someone gave me the gift of what they sent me was a biography of myself using the $200 a month version of ChatGPT, and it was entirely accurate except for one article that I had co-authored with someone. They had the wrong co-author name. Now, in any case, that's not really going to hurt anyone in that particular circumstance. Very unlikely, but it could be embarrassing and hurt the value of what your organization is offering if it's something that's discovered, even a minor inaccuracy. The other main issue when it comes to AI for people with disabilities is hiring practices. A lot of concern out there about the algorithm of how it's processing resumes, and it might screen out people even if they have resumes that do fit under the AI. If they're missing one potential requirement that maybe they don't have to fill, but in 90% of other ways, if you actually interview them, it would turn out that they would be a great fit for the job. I know a lot of people who have, I guess possibly even myself, possibly been screened out of jobs that way. And one person who came very close to being screened out, but did end up getting hired in the end and has been great.
and that's really key with AI. AI has no empathy, obviously, and that's the key differentiator, and especially in the hiring department and the HR, so forth. That AI is not going to know that somebody has a big gap in their resume because they were adjusting to blindness. So to AI, that might just seem that, oh, this person didn't want to work for 3 years or 4 years or 5 years, and they would immediately screen them, not knowing the backstory.
Yes.
All right. Next question would pose to Jonathan first. So as we're thinking about how organizations are, getting their employees ready for AI use, what type of skills need to be developed? How can organizations think about upskilling, reskilling their employees in this area?
Yeah, I think it's a great question as this becomes more and more predominant in our work lives. And I think it starts with policy. So organizations need to develop policy around training, but also usage of AI for each person's job. And some jobs, this may become a very pertinent tool. Some jobs it may not, but that needs to be laid out clearly, first in policy, but also in the job description, right? I know we're going through right now for ourselves, updating our job descriptions, and because nothing's ever static. So it's a good practice for organizations to update job descriptions that include whether or not AI is a mandate or a prerequisite for that role. And also training. So, each organization should have, each individual within an organization should have a training plan as for the professional growth. And to include that, I think we all need to probably have a course in AI and refresh that, maybe once a year or once every other year as new technology comes out. I think that's really, really important. I think the skills needed, I think, look, it's a research tool first and foremost. So how do you ask the right questions? If you, and Skylar probably can attest to this, when you're getting your doctorate degree, one of the things that you learn straight away is how to do research before you ever begin, selecting a topic and delving into it. How to ask the right questions, how to understand how to mine for data, understanding what data is good data versus bad data. And so that all can be down to a keystroke if you're using something like ChatGPT. So it's important to understand that and understand where you can create efficiencies in your role and your job. So it's important for managers, especially, to say, okay, how can AI make this person's job more efficient, or how can it make them more effective in their role? And then implement that as a part of the workload for these individuals, and how to use these tools. So I think there's a lot of opportunity as we move forward in the workplace to use these tools for effectiveness and efficiency in our particular roles. But I think it needs to be clearly demonstrated and laid out by the organizations themselves.
Right. Well, we have just a couple more minutes, so I want to end. We started the conversation by saying everything we were about, going to share is going to be outdated in, just a month, and just, due to the pace of change. And, I think though a lot of the principles discussed will ring true as a framework for, the way that, this is shaping the workforce. And so the last question is, I'll start with Doug, but, would like all to weigh in very briefly in our last couple minutes here. What do you see as kind of the lasting impacts on the workforce?
I think the benefit, the positives far outweigh any type of perceived threats with AI for people who are blind and with disabilities, because it opens up so much access to information. Yes, there are cases where very, very, very entry-level jobs, phone support and so forth, could be threatened by AI models, but there are even more opportunities, I think, for people who don't have to have vision to be able to succeed. And some of these areas are within your company with data collection or data validation. In other words, there are growing job fields in training AI models on your data. In other words, that you would go through all of your data and have it categorized the way your company wants it, and then train that AI model to produce output that's specific to your company. That's a big growing field to have that kind of customization and people who know how to do that using artificial intelligence. And for the customer service side, contact centers and so forth, that's training chatbots on your company. The chatbot doesn't have to do all the work, but somebody can be paid as a trainer to look for the output prompts and find the best input prompts and be able to do that for their company. So I see a more of a brighter future than some people might think, especially in the blindness community, that jobs are going to be taken.
Great. Skylar, any last thoughts in about a minute?
I think that AI overall brings a lot of opportunities for blind people and visually impaired people through document generation, document summarization, providing faster research, providing some writing tools. All of that can save a lot of time, but we definitely need to make sure that some of the major positions that blind people tend to excel in are not eliminated by AI. With everything else being more efficient, it is possible that there could be a more limited number of jobs to go around, plus some of the screening issues that I mentioned. But blind people can really excel at using AI by understanding what prompts to put in and how to use it to create the files that are needed faster. Even things like PowerPoint slides. I forgot to mention when I talked about this before. Having blind people be able to create visually appealing files really quickly can be a really real asset on a lot of jobs, because for so many jobs, the inability to create those visual presentations can be a reason why blind people don't get an interview or don't get hired. So we do have a lot of really good opportunities here, and I am always happy to be in touch uh, if anybody needs more training, as I am open for consulting or full-time positions myself at the moment. Thank you.
Thanks, Skylar. All right, well, we're at our last minute. Love for anyone who would like to just share in the chat what excites you most about AI in the workplace. Yes, if we had more time, we'd get into the worries, and we know those are there too, but if you'd like to share, we'd love to hear from you. What do you see as, the most exciting use case for AI in your workplace? And we'll stick around. I know I'll stick around. We're at our last minute here, so stay a couple minutes. Know some of you may have to drop off, and want to thank our panelists for the fantastic discussion and for all of you for joining.
There's a few questions in the Q&A as well, actually.
Okay. We got to a few of them. I have it. Let me see if there's some we haven't gotten to.
Well, you pull it up. I'll just answer a couple of questions around VR and utilization of AI. I've not heard yet. So I was at a VR conference back in the fall, and there was a lot of talk around training for AI and understanding that people are going to be asking for things like meta glasses or maybe higher end subscriptions to ChatGPT and other things. I think they're still getting their heads around it. I do believe eventually meta glasses, that kind of technology will be paid for by VR because it's so become crucial to job attainment. But that's something they're just now wrapping their heads around, and the training piece is well there. But if you're needing that, or you think that's going to help you in some way, I would not hesitate to ask your appropriate help counselor.
Thanks, Jonathan. There's another question in here that we didn't get to from Inicio, ask as to whether or not these apps can be justified as an employment accommodation. Any thoughts there? Or any thoughts in the chat?
I think you could. I think you make your case, right? And if it can make a difference in being successful in your role, at work, I would definitely think you can make a case for that.
Yeah, I would agree.
Good question. All right. Well, hope you're taking your excitement with you as you leave. We've enjoyed this. We've enjoyed the conversation. Appreciate all the good comments and questions, and we will leave it there. So thank you, everyone.
Thank
Please
you.
don't hesitate to reach out to us anytime. We will share a recording of this with those who registered, and I'll provide a few links too around some of the things that we talked about. So look out for that, and please don't hesitate to reach out to us at Insight if you have any questions.